Hi, I'm Kirsten Birkett for St Paul's Church at Hadley Wood. Just sharing some thoughts on what God says about suffering. During this time of lockdown and crisis, we might wonder what God is doing. Why did he allow this to happen? Why did he send illness? Is he punishing us? How could he allow so much suffering? People getting ill and dying, people having to risk themselves to care for others, and all the ongoing suffering, the economic hardship and the downturn that will follow. Just what is God doing in all of this? The Bible gives many answers to our questions about suffering. There are also things we don't know. God doesn't tell us everything. He's not accountable to us, after all. It's precisely the other way around. But we certainly do know many things about what God is doing in suffering. And I'd like to reflect on just one of those in this short video. I'm reading from the book of Romans, chapter 5, verses 2 to 5. We rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit, whom he has given us. The Apostle Paul, speaking here of all Christians, says, we rejoice in our sufferings. That's odd. Do we? Actually, I'm much more likely to complain about my sufferings, to lament and wish things were different. What can he mean? Well, he doesn't mean that suffering doesn't hurt. He's not trying to say that suffering isn't really all that bad. No, the Apostle Paul knew perfectly well how bad suffering in this world can be, and more than most. He faced the death of friends and loved ones. He suffered desertion and betrayal by people he trusted. He also had a great deal of physical pain that most of us have never had, being beaten, flogged, and left for dead. He was not some unfeeling superhero. He knew pain. He also never tried to ignore suffering. Now, that's our modern tactic. We try to ignore death and pain, shove it away in institutions and let the professionals deal with it. We pretend it's not real. Or we pretend it's not bad, that death is just another transition. It doesn't matter all that much. No, death and illness are bad. They're awful and frightening and horrible. And now with a worldwide virus, we are unable to push it aside. Death is now confronting us in a way that the modern world cannot hide from, in a way that the Apostle Paul knew well. So what does he mean, rejoice in suffering? How can we rejoice in something bad? We can understand rejoicing in hope, which is what verse 2 says. That's a good thing. But how can we rejoice in a bad thing? Well, Paul gives us a good reason for rejoicing in suffering. It's because we know what it can do. Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope, the good thing we started with. We grow stronger through suffering. These are good things, and they bring us back to hope, the certain hope we have in God. So take some time to reflect on this verse. We know, as psychologists tell us, and as we know from our own life experience, that depth of character and true wisdom don't appear out of nowhere. Our suffering creates something good in us. We have meaning, even within suffering. We have hope. We have peace with God through Christ. That is the greatest gift, and that is why even suffering can be rejoiced in.